everybody! It's Sophie and Marco dish out on the movies. And guess what? Monday night was finale night of The Alienist. Episode 10 called Castle in the Sky. Glad we didn't record our review live because the reception screwed up our viewing of the main event. The capture of the killer. It was very annoying. Not the capture of the killer, but that the reception went in and out and it was hard to follow.
Oh, I would argue that both were annoying.
Well,
excuse me.
Whatever. Since I read the book, I knew its version of the end, but wanted to see how it unfolded on TV. And I had to rewatch it again yesterday morning while the reception was better to see how it played out. Last week I knew that the ending was already going to be different than in the book because of Joseph. In the book, Joseph dies,
Spoiler alert!
Not like the other boys, not cut up into pieces with gouged out eyes, but just a stab wound through the brain, I believe. While I have not been on board with some of the changes, which I believe were made in pursuance of racial and gender-driven agendas, I did appreciate some of the ones made to tie up loose ends dangled throughout the story. So what happened on Monday night? Last week Joseph got kidnapped by the killer after he overheard his friend being murdered. He hid nearby and the killer heard him breathing heavily or whatever, and he found him and took him away. John Moore professed his love for Sarah, and Chrysler even gave him the wedding ring that was going to be Mary's to give to whomever would become special in John's life.
That was at the very end, though.
Yeah.
They were at the dinner table.
Although neither happened in the book, I liked those changes. And I think Marco did too, right? With John.
What changes are you, what?
The changes with that John and Sarah might be getting together and that...
Well, I wanted them to get together. I think it's stupid that just because she's supposed to be like a strong, independent character, she can't fall
have
in
a love life.
And, yeah. I hate that. That's a huge misconception when talking about that type of belief that all women that are strong and independent can't get married or fall in love. So
yeah. And I thought they made a good couple too, and they've known each other since they were kids.
What the only thing is, so it's kind of like, does he think he's never gonna find love because he gives him that ring? Because
yeah, I know. I thought that was sad, but
he could still.
I know. But who knows?
In the book.
Who knows? But not in the book. It doesn't sound like it. But of course, like I said, there are follow-ups to the book. And I haven't read them, so I have no idea. So anyway, I wanted to bring up the fact that something very significant happened in the end in the book that did not play out on TV, however. I was surprised, and Marco was very disappointed that the ending wasn't as impactful as I had promised. What can I say?
She said, it's going to be really exciting.
It's not my fault. Anyway, what happens? What else happens? Chrysler re-enters the investigation after Sarah has a heart-to-heart talk with him. They end up apologizing to each other and both sharing their horrific childhood secrets. Both, you ask? Yes. His father was a child abuser and an alcoholic. And if you paid attention, Laszlo Chrysler was a phenom child pianist whose future in music ended one night when his father turned on him and fractured his arm in a fit of rage, destroying permanently his ability to play the piano with both hands. Apparently Sarah had a secret too, though. Remember that we were told her father committed suicide? Well, he made her help him pull the trigger. That
After he
was not,
failed.
and that was not in the book. She told Chrysler that this investigation and him taught her to leave these unpleasant things behind and move on. And if we didn't, then we would all be killers, right? And in the world of reality, that was a very solid and truthful statement. So, there's lots of different other things that happened. Some were meaningful, some were not. And does Marco want to talk about any of these? We have,
So that, I mean, that's all you're gonna say for like the summary?
yes,
Like, oh,
that I
okay.
wrote.
That's good. Well, okay, number one, I think the episode got worse as it went along. It wasn't because the reception for me, like that's not the primary reason. I mean, in terms of the episode, the stuff at the beginning was good. The stuff with him professing his love for Sarah, and then Sarah having a talk with Chrysler. That was the best stuff of the episode.
Well, also, John was very upset about Joseph. He felt he had let him down, and it was kind of strange. Now, it doesn't happen in the book, of course, but if you wanted to play it all out in the episode, you might say, well, you might have thought, why didn't John, instead of just giving him money, why didn't he take him in? Because, Chrysler had taken in Mary, he'd taken in Cyrus, he'd taken in
Oh yeah,
Stevie,
yeah.
and so, and
Yeah.
he seemed like he seemed very fond of Joseph, that he could, like adopt him or whatever. I mean, it's not like Chrysler adopted all those people, but I mean, they they came to play a very significant role in his life, and I mean, almost like they were all a family in a way. At least that's the way I interpreted it. But so he was very upset because he got kidnapped, and oh yeah, there was another murder. His friend, like I said, and he was so upset he went right away to look at the boy thinking, oh no, it's Joseph. It's not Joseph. He was very relieved, but then he found out no, he couldn't find him anywhere. And he asked everybody, no one knew where he was, so he was they thought that he probably was kidnapped by the killer and that he was going to be killed. And he was very upset, and Sarah comforted him, and that's when he professed his love for her,
And they kissed.
they kissed.
But then at the end of the episode, she says stuff that completely contradicts everything that's already happened in the episodes.
Well, but he says he'll wait for her. So that's very Hallmark, I guess. Or maybe Hallmark would have been, in a Hallmark movie they would have just gotten together, but this isn't a Hallmark movie.
No, it's like Twin Peaks when the motorcycle kid leaves town and that biatch girl's like, I'll wait for you, James, and then he sleeps with a woman and we don't need to get into Twin Peaks.
No.
That was a horrible storyline, but anyway, also I don't know. It didn't feel much like a finale. It felt like they were trying to do a finale, but they just don't know how. Like the writers just don't know because they acted like we care about the Esther storyline.
Okay, Esther, to remind you, was a girl that Marcus
Had sex with.
and well, he told his brother that he loved her, I think, or his brother Lucius said, "You love her, don't you?" I can't remember how exactly
He
it
told
played
his
out.
brother he loved her, and
Okay,
then he brought her over for dinner for 10 seconds
but his mother was not happy.
because
She had
they don't
been
have a connection.
well, she had been married. Her husband left her, and it sounded like in this last episode that her husband had left her because she got pregnant and had a baby, and he didn't want to be a father, and so he had run out on the marriage. And so maybe, you know, their mother, Lucius and Marcus's mother, didn't care for that. So whatever, we don't need to go on that either because none of that was in the book.
And nobody cared about it.
Lucius and Marcus, it was really, they didn't, the only thing that was personal about them that was brought up in the book was the fact of their names, and that is brought up on
I mean,
TV too.
do you think that like anybody cares about this random girl that he has sex with and he meets at a socialist convention and then he loves her even though they don't have a connection? Like, who cares? And they spend this time with like the stupid scene with her, and then they have another scene with her that's even more brief and
Yeah,
pointless.
they had two scenes. And what happened was he they were walking. The boys were walking down the street. They were going to work or coming back from work, whatever. And she comes up to her and says she wants to talk to him, and it says you don't have to avoid me. I'm not going to bother you. It's just can't you? Why do you have to avoid me? And then he goes back to her house later on in the episode, and he apologizes, and then they kiss, which means maybe they're going to get back together in the future. I don't know. But it was kind of unnecessary.
Make a definitive statement.
And it really kind of made me mad in a way because what I had read in the book and I thought might be in the show, which would make it even more exciting and everybody would be cheering, was I think that could have been the thing about Esther could have been left out, and the thing that was in the book that they left out and for the ending could have been put back, put in. I don't know if it was ever in, but it could have been put in. The time wise, they were already. I think they ran over as it was with the episode into the next hour.
Yeah, it was like an hour and 5 minutes.
So I know that if there was time constraints and they did have to do all this stuff. I mean, they only had 10 episodes. When we talked about the beginning,
we thought maybe there's 20 something.
Well, they're what that is the extras that they did, and I did watch several of those. And if any of you can watch the extras,
But to be fair,
because some of them are really good.
It seems like a show that should have over 20 episodes. It doesn't seem like a show that should just be.
Well, they
10
could have had
episodes.
13.
Yeah, 13 would have been good too. Another thing I want to get into, they had the stupid random scene where the killer picks up his cat and beats it to the floor and kills it in front of the kids.
In front of Joseph.
It was so
to scare
pointless and stupid.
Well, it was terrible, and it didn't happen. We know that.
It's funny because she has this little hypocrisy where she refuses to watch a movie if a dog or a cat gets killed.
Or anything gets killed.
But then a cat gets killed
Well,
on the show. And
I didn't know it was going to happen. It wasn't in the book.
Yeah,
and it was not necessary.
Because it was pointless.
I think the only thing I can think of is the reason why they did that was because
it doesn't make any sense.
In the first place they went to, they investigated the first place. Like he had worked at the Census Bureau. He was fired because this girl's parents complained about him paying too much attention to her, and so they went to that place. It was at a boarding house owned by a woman who had lots of cats, and on the day that he left the house, he moved out, one of her cats disappeared. And when they went to investigate, they found the body of the cat. And that is the only connection between that and why it just didn't make sense.
Weak.
Because none of the other that kind of thing didn't happen with any of the other kids.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen in the book either at all.
Well, also, here's another thing, is that he wouldn't. There'd be no point in trying to scare the kid
No,
'Cause
he's already scared.
you also said that before. You said maybe he's trying to scare the kid.
Well, scare him
And,
even more, which is just
so
silly. It's like for extra effect, which you don't need. They
it's
didn't need it.
overdoing it.
Yeah, it's an overkill.
Like
Literally.
the feminist agenda on the show too.
Well, I don't know what agenda would that be. It's just overkill. Literally.
Okay, so another thing I'd like to talk about finally is the quote climactic scene. Probably one of the worst scenes in history.
That's not true,
Yeah,
Marco.
it is. And now let me talk. Okay. Uh, so in this scene, it's just horrible. It's hard to even talking about it without getting irritated. And I have to waste my breath describing it in its entirety. So, it's basically, I'll just give you a comparison. Okay, pretend that you're watching the Dark Knight. Okay? Now pretend when Batman's fighting the Joker, suddenly one of the Joker's thugs comes up and kills the Joker and then tries to kill Batman. That's what it's like. It's completely anticlimactic and boring and just short and unspectacular, and like they weren't even trying. Uh, because let's talk about this. So you have Connor who killed Mary, the woman that Chrysler loves,
And they show lots and lots of footage of him
of him just sitting there with
being
a sad
depressed
face.
and being
And
depressed.
so you'd think
Lots.
that he would, the thing that he would care most about is killing this this garbage face. So
Well, there would be two things he cared about: getting
getting
revenge
a killer
and finding the
getting
killer.
revenge.
Right.
And he doesn't get revenge. Sarah, of course, gets to kill him as a part of the show's feminist agenda. They had some lines with him saying,
Yes, but that happened in the book too.
no, it didn't. They did not have lines with him saying, first women in the police department.
Marco, why don't you just say it regularly? So because they don't know what you're talking about. What happened was, Chrysler and John, they're at the opera. And it's the night of the feast of John the Baptist. This is when they all figured out that this would be when he would try to kill Joseph. Okay, because, well, it's about he had an affinity to water, and the affinity to water was that when you get bathed by it or you're near it, that it can somehow make you better, that it can there's a word and I can't think of the word.
Okay,
Sanitize
so
you or something.
Connors, instead of confronting Chrysler, who is his mortal enemy, the whole entire season. I mean, the whole season is talking about how he doesn't like the alienist. He doesn't want the alienist to solve anything. Instead of going up to him, he goes up to Sarah and says, "Oh, I don't like that you're a woman and that you're the first woman in the police department. That's a joke.
And that didn't happen in the book at all.
I mean, that's so corny and so agenda driven. Just insane how stupid it is. And to top that, she shoots him with two guns that apparently she has. I guess she brought guns.
No, she brought a gun. In the book, she always she carried two guns.
I thought she had. No, I thought that she had two guns.
She had a
next
little
to each
a little
other.
pistol.
Oh.
A little pistol. Remember, in the book, like I said, she had this little pistol, and she put a high caliber bullet in it. So it may be a little pistol and maybe look like nothing, but it packs a lot of damage.
Sophie made a big deal about the Connors. She said, "Oh, he's gonna get what he deserves."
Well, the thing is, He killed. He probably in today's world in the legal system, it would probably be called manslaughter. Okay, because he did not. I don't. I mean, I could remember it wrong, but I don't think he just deliberately killed her. She had a knife, and she attacked him, and he pushed her, or what did he do? He throw her over?
No, she was running away from him, and she reverse ran and fell off the top of the stairs.
Yeah. So
So
I
it was
mean,
her fault,
but he was there, and he
basically.
was doing all this, and so it'd probably be manslaughter in today's world. But I don't, probably didn't have that back then. I really doubt it. But anyway, so here Chrysler wanted to marry her. He was very upset that
And you
and
claimed
well in the book
that Chrysler gets
in the
revenge and that
yeah he
Connors gets.
does.
No,
What
not really.
happens in the
No.
book, not here, but in the book, while Chrysler is moaning and depressing over the loss, he decides to do something about Connor, and he hires a boxer to beat the crap out of Connor.
Okay, can I talk now?
Yeah, go ahead. So that
Okay.
did not happen.
Okay. She said repeatedly Connors was gonna get what he deserved.
Well, that's what happened.
Okay, can I talk now? He didn't get anything of what he deserves. I presume that maybe that Burns would cut ties with him, and that he would be on the street. He would be like all alone, and then he would get kidnapped, and Chrysler would get to torture him to death. And because I thought that would be a much better ending for Connors than the stupid ending that they did with the feminist agenda shit, which the show continues to do, and really just proves that the show is horrible. And also with that final scene, it's just very anticlimactic. The killer, I mean, he looks like Tarzan mixed with Belle's dad and Beauty and the Beast, and mixed with Jeff Bridges, and he's just climbing around the walls, thumping people in the head, and then going ugh, like a like a big ape, and then he gets shot randomly in the back, like spoiler alert for Departed. It's like when Leonardo DiCaprio gets shot randomly by a random guy who who says he was a bad guy the whole movie. Apparently, that's what it's like.
Who
And
shot him, Marco?
huh?
Who shot him?
Connor shot him
Okay, well,
in the back for no reason. Oh, he's gonna kill everybody. Wow, that's very interesting and well thought out, writers. And then after that, well, it's just and God, it was so anticlimactic and dull compared to what it could have been. And they didn't. And let's talk about the biggest issue. They didn't even do anything with his facial tick. They set up the whole entire thing with Beecham that they're like, oh, he has this facial tick, and it when he gets mad, he'll his face is gonna shake all around, and it looks funny, but it's tragic, and that never happens. Of course, he never.
they show his face, but it's like he was cut,
Yeah.
scarred, like somebody had gotten a knife and cut his face.
So
He has scar.
I presumed that they were going to use this facial tick against him by maybe Chrysler and or Sarah would say demeaning things to him, and that would trigger his facial tick,
Nope.
therefore making it able for them to attack him.
No, that
So
didn't happen in the book. Connor.
that's
And
what I would have done, and that's what I presume after all this setup of him having a facial tick.
well, in the book, Connor uh, comes up upon them, and he it's got a gun. He draws it. He's going to kill him, and then his facial tic starts acting up, and so actually, well, whatever.
And this, I mean, after all this buildup, he has a facial tick. He has a facial tick. Okay, who cares?
I know. I
If
mean,
it's
they said it over and over. It's said over and over in the book, but it follows through
if it's
more.
not going to be used, then who gives a flying F? And then they have that thing with the whistling, the finger whistling, and that's not explained. And apparently, Stevie teaches her to whistle, and we don't know that because we never get shown that, and it's just really random and weird and
He's talking
cutesy.
about at the end, Sarah whistles for a cab and impresses John. They're walking together, and she did say Stevie taught me how to do it, right?
No,
No. Well,
no,
he taught her how in the book.
it was just a
She
random
said he
thing.
taught her how to do it. Anyway, um, another thing that happened, and it didn't happen in the book. I keep saying that. I hate to say that, but Connor shot the guy, and then he was gonna get the rest of them, and Sarah came up upon the scene with because Chrysler and John Moore, they went on their own to this big reservoir in the city, and everybody else were they went to a bridge, the Brooklyn Bridge, and they went to another place, and Chrysler made it to where everybody was going these different places because he knew he was being watched by Connor, by Burns, by a lot of people. And so he tried to fool them, but it didn't fool Connor because he was waiting outside the opera, and he saw he followed them where they were going, and was like, okay. So anyway, like we said, Sarah killed Connor, and at the end, I mean, we might as well tell you because there's no more episodes. They take the body of the serial killer away because he was dying, and he couldn't answer Chrysler's questions. Why did you do it? Why did you kill all these people? What were you thinking of? He couldn't answer them. He he was too messed up, and with being shot, and so he ends up dying. And they take him back, and what do you think? He's a scientist, he's a psychologist, he's an alienist, and was brought out in one of these extras. Why are there serial killers? What makes a person kill multiple people? Is it because of the way they were brought up, or is it something about their brain? And so what do you think happens? They do an autopsy, and they look at his brain.
Uh-huh.
And but then
And
after
that's
after that, the commissioner comes and said, "What happened? I'm very unhappy." And to appease Burns, and which was really ridiculous, but to appease it because remember last week, uh, this was right after Mary died. Uh, Roosevelt went to see Burns in the saloon, and there was all these people with him, ex-cops, or maybe they were cops that were working for the police department. They're all together. They take bribes, all this stuff, and he said, uh, the ex-commissioner Burns said, "Well, nobody respects you," and Roosevelt said, "Well, if those who live in the past are weak or something," because Burns didn't like these new
so
police
basic.
methods.
And you think that oh, how are they going to defeat this ultimate evil? These rich people, these corrupt police, and they don't defeat them.
No,
They accept a bribe from them and basically teach you that it's okay to accept a bribe as long as it's for a good cause. Because the whole season, they they acted like these police are horrible people for taking bribes, and but then at the end they accept a bribe and they're like, who cares? We don't care.
I don't understand what you're saying.
The whole season, the police are accepting bribes and being corrupt, and they care about that. But in the end, they take a bribe
What bribe did they take?
for Burns to leave them alone in exchange for honoring that shithead Connors and saying that he's a good guy.
Well, what happened was, in order to appease Burns and because Roosevelt said he came there, he wanted this position because he wanted to clean up the corruption in the police department and in the city, but he just couldn't do it, and he wanted to move on and be in politics. In fact, he was getting ready to go to the Democratic convention for McKinley. I can't remember. And what they did was, we know that Connor was bad, and so does Burns, because remember, he killed the guy with the silver smile. He shot him in the head.
Better villain.
He threw him in the water. They disposed of his body. Nobody even knows about that. And Burns even knows that because he hired Connor to follow the guy and to follow Chrysler. And then he went into that house, and Mary ended up getting killed. But what they did was, Roosevelt decided to appease him. He's getting ready to leave, go to this convention, leave town, that they would give, and this wasn't in the book, to give, have Mrs. Connor and their boy come into the police department, and they would give, they would say that
give a medal to the family.
Connor killed the guy, which he did shoot him, and it did kill him. And he say that he wasn't even though he wasn't a member of the police department anymore, that he felt the need to help get the killer, and so they gave the family a how do you say it, a medal honoring him, and then they took the picture for the paper, and then Burns nodded his head, and that was kind of pukey.
Gay.
But
because the whole season, it's like, oh, we have to fight against police corruption, and then at the end, oh, it's okay.
no, it wasn't okay. He just realized it was bigger than what he could do,
Well,
and he wasn't.
Basically,
he couldn't do it.
It's basically Roosevelt's big. I'm not gonna say the word, but you can imagine what I was gonna say.
Well, in real life, Roosevelt did go to New York City, like I said a long time ago in one of our episodes. I looked it up. He did want to clean up the corruption. He did go through the city. They did fire some cops who had made all this money taking bribes, including one who made a ton of money, and I guess it was supposed to be like Burns, but it was a big major detective. He got fired, but they didn't say why. They just fired him. And they closed, and they mentioned this a few times, they closed the saloons on Sunday, but that made the people mad because they worked 6 days a week, and they used that 7th day to go to the bar and have and drink and have fun, some of them. And he closed that, and that made people mad. But Roosevelt, to this day, and even though he admitted he couldn't clean it up, there's just too much, and he couldn't do it by himself, he had to have more cooperation. He wasn't getting cooperation.
Boo-hoo.
He left, but people still remember him fondly anyway in New York City, because he did try, but it just couldn't do it. So
just because he tried doesn't make him the best thing ever happened.
well, but that's just what they say.
Not what I say. Okay, so anyways, yeah, overall, I mean, I thought the season finale actually started off strong. I mean, and I bet everybody who's listening to this is very surprised to hear me say that, since I repeatedly denounced this show and denounced the horrible writers who fail with their agenda riddled dribble, and but in this episode, it actually started off really strong with a couple of scenes, very character driven scenes over just plot scenes, like a lot of the show is just plot, 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 plot. We have to go here because plot. Let's do this plot, 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 plot. And in this, we start off with character stuff, and then we get to plot, of course.
Character growth.
Uh, and Sarah gets the only character growth she's gotten through the whole season. And in my opinion, because we talked about why wouldn't she have these guns around, they made a big deal about in the book she would flaunt her guns and point them at people if she didn't like them and use them to get. I mean, in that pre-finale, you know, if Connors went up to her like that and threatened to rape her, she would have put her gun up against his head. But
it didn't look like she carried one.
yeah,
and then all of a sudden,
one.
at the end,
she does.
She comes onto the scene late because they made it. You know, he made it. Chrysler made it to where nobody else knew where they were, and she figured out where the guy, the serial killer, was going because of the feast of the John the Baptist, and this is a huge water source. It's a reservoir. It's very high up in the sky. They were all up at the top, and she comes onto the scene late. Connor doesn't know she's coming. Nobody knows she's going to show up. She's got a little tiny pistol, and boom, she kills him because he's going to kill everybody else. He's going to kill Chrysler. He's going to kill John Moore. He's already killed the serial killer. And, by the way, Joseph ends up, he's okay. He wasn't even in the final scene.
Yeah, that was frustrating too.
He was okay. The guy did kind of knock him out. He kind of like took his breath away, but but it didn't, he didn't die. It was brief. And, so he's okay, and I think we should mention too, because this is the end of the show, but Dr. Chrysler visits his father at the end very end of the episode.
And it was not a good scene to end on.
Well, Marco, tell him okay, this is what happens. He's old. I thought maybe his parents were both dead, because he is older, and so, that wouldn't be, this is at a time when people died at a younger age. They didn't live to be 90 or 100 years old. That was very abnormal. And so he goes to this place, and the nurse says he's over there, and he starts talking to him, and then he said, he says some words. I'm not going to say, watch it for yourself, and then it's over. The whole thing's over. Now, Marco, you said, we were talking about this, how would have been better, where would have been a better place to end it?
There's a lot of things that I would change.
Well, there was one thing he said that sounded good.
The climax scene that I would change completely. Instead of ending it with him visiting his father and telling him that, he was never a victim, it's all his fault that he was abused, because that's basically what he said. Well, he said he forgives him, which is, I don't know why you would say. You shouldn't say that to somebody until they're dead. Somebody like him.
Well, I don't even know if he understood it. It seemed like he was. I don't know. He was messed up. Like maybe he had Alzheimer's or something.
It reminded me, if you guys have ever seen Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, the main girl's sister was abused by her father, and at the end, Robert Downey Jr. and Val Kilmer, maybe just one of them, I can't remember, goes to visit the father on his deathbed and tells him that he's a piece of shit, and the father's like, "How dare you? I'm a senior citizen." and he's dying, and he's like, "You're gonna die soon, and nobody's gonna remember you, you dumb piece of crap." And so then, I think instead of that stupid scene, I think that it should have ended with that brain discovery scene
Yeah,
where they
well,
all discover uh, that the brain wasn't defective.
yeah, it's what happens is Chrysler and the two brothers, the forensic cops, they all three are doing the autopsy. You see the brain, you see him cut it open. There's nothing wrong with it at all, perfectly normal. And then everybody else, I think Roosevelt and Sarah are there, and he announces there's nothing wrong with the brain. It's perfectly fine. We'll never know. We may never know what happens, why he did it, or other people, you know.
But we can learn from other bad people maybe why he did it. And then Sarah says, of course, has to say some sort of cheesy and horrible line of her many horrible lines. She says, "And from the people who do good." So, and we learn from people who do good why they do good. Uh, so, I,
So Marco thinks that it would have been better just to end it with that
yeah.
and not have him go see his father.
No, I think he should have seen his father. I think that shouldn't have been the ending scene. I would have switched those scenes out.
Oh, yeah, they could have done that. Oh, and this happened in the book too. They wrap up the body and put it in a cart and put it out there, and the cops find it, and it says on there, this is Japheth Dury, which is not his name is really Japheth Dury, and he took on the name of a man who raped him, which was what's his name? First name
John
John
Beecham.
Beecham. He took that name on, and they thought that John was like John the Baptist, and then Beecham was the name of the guy who raped him when he was a kid, and they went up to the mountains, and they left this note said, this is the guy who killed all the kids.
Well, okay, I'm actually gonna make a suggestion now that people are gonna I don't know. So with this whole thing of John the Baptist and the reservoir and water baptizing him, so maybe would this have been the last time that he killed a kid? You think that maybe this is like the representation of of forgiveness and baptizing the character
No,
of John Beecham of
no,
his. I think that he would have quit killing kids after this one.
no, I don't
Yeah,
believe it. I don't.
yeah.
I don't believe it.
I think that there's a point.
I don't believe it.
I think there's a point, and that with this one, it was the final one. He killed the cat, so he was probably just gonna leave and I don't know, live as a recluse, or maybe I actually think he would have killed himself. I think he would have jumped off the tower after killing the kid.
I
So
don't know because he's very. Was it? This sounds really ironic. His father was a preacher, and his mother loved all that preaching too. And I think that
so
if he would have
you're
killed himself, that would have been like a sin. Even though they weren't
yeah.
Catholic, they were not Catholic, and I don't know if it's a sin to do that, but I think it would have been. I think he would have thought it was a sin, and which is really weird. He's killing people right and left, but he would have thought killing his own self would be a sin. Which,
Yeah.
but you never know. Somebody as twisted as that, you just don't know what's in there. It's just like him picking places by water because, and also the days that he picked to kill the people were religious holidays. It may be holidays that most of us don't really celebrate or know anything about, but they are religious holidays. If you look at like some kind of special, like religious calendar, you would see those holidays.
Okay, well, I changed my mind. Actually, I think here's what I think he would have done. Okay, so this is supposed to represent the whole killing of Joseph is supposed to represent uh, John Beecham getting baptized with the with this this killing, and that then he could take up another identity and move on somewhere else.
I don't know because he took the identity of a specific person who raped him as a child.
Well, I think that this
So
was supposed to be the final one. It's supposed to represent that that all people can be forgiven or something like that. Because you think about what's the theme of the episode is forgiveness and moving on and acceptance. So you would that would go along with that theme very well. In fact, I'm not gonna. Never mind about that. I was gonna say
okay.
something else. Okay, so what did you think about the season as a whole?
Well, I know you don't, but I liked it, and they did. If you I suggest first number one, I've said this a million times, is read the book. Number two, watch these extras because they do add a lot to the show. They talk about the first woman policeman, which I was talking about, and Marco, the first woman policeman for the New York City Police Department, was actually a matron in a prison, and she was really good. They liked her, and that they talk about that. They talked about serial killers throughout history, and they even had one that was German, and they had Daniel Bruhl read about what he said, and he was said, "Wow, this guy's really weird," you know. He said something. He said something, a cuss word, but I don't want to say it, and
The
because
C
if
word.
no, and
Oh, okay.
but I mean, it's just weird how it comes out of his mouth 'cause he seems really proper. Anyway, so and let's see, they talked about the fashion, which I already talked about a long time
That was
ago. That
contradictory.
that was okay. Well, what happens is they interview Daniel Bruhl, they interview John Moore, they interview the girl who plays Sarah, and they talk about how fashion kind of changed, like how they walked and how they acted. It helped their acting. Like Bruhl said, you know, they had to wear this very. He said it was really hard to move around. They had to wear this really stiff collar, and they had to carry a cane, and so
Which actually, carrying a can is a benefit because you could use it as a weapon.
right, right, that's true. But he said that it affected their movement, like this collar thing that the men had to wear. And another thing, they talked about the location, and they built this huge set, massive set. It was like a whole city within a city. This is they picked. They had several European cities to pick, and they picked Budapest because they had this place where you could have the city. They had these high places with the water. They had this opera house, and the opera played a big part in the finale. That's where, and they went to the opera another time too, and that played a part in what was going on. And they were doing Don Giovanni, and there's this part where there's these explosions on
And
stage.
that's what distracted
It's
Burns.
distract. Burns was watching Chrysler and John Moore because he knew something was up, and they waited until since Chrysler was very familiar, and I think John Moore was too, but very familiar with Don Giovanni, the opera. Uh, they knew this explosion thing was coming up, and they knew they could run out of there. Well, Chrysler did. They were going to run out of there and get
Oh,
in a carriage and
wait a
go to the
second.
scene.
Wait a second. Actually, there's also another scene that I really liked where Chrysler was telling John what they were gonna do, and John was like, "I'm gonna meet with Roosevelt so we can go stake out this place." And Chrysler's like,
You want to come along?
"You want to go to the opera with me?" He's like, "No." Or maybe after the stakeout we can do that. And he's like, "No, it has to be before the stakeout. We're going to the opera." And that scene was really good. And also, I think that Daniel Bruhl should be Batman because it really reminds me with him moping around his huge mansion and the way that he is. He's a detective just like Batman. It really reminds me of Batman. So
We have to be a German-oriented Batman.
just because he's German, he can't be
No, but he
Batman.
could say he could say some of his German phrases, and I don't know. He I don't know. Maybe it could be Batman, but the opera was beautiful. They showed this scene, this major scene, and they had the woman singing. I know she has a certain name. I just not familiar with
The
the opera.
woman.
And she has this beautiful red velvet dress on and beautiful voice. And then they show this scene with all these men with black robes and like skull faces, and they had Don Giovanni come out. He has his face is dark, and he looks like, I guess is he supposed to be the devil? I don't know. I'm not familiar with the story, but it was really, and he's singing, and they're doing all this movement all in unison around these devil people or these skull people, and it's really exciting and it's beautiful, very beautiful voices and
So
beautiful opera.
overall for season one, okay, season one, it, uh,
Well,
it
just
was.
leave the agenda crap out of it.
I
That's
should.
one. Two,
Oh, okay, you're
get
talking
rid
about
of the gratuitous sex scenes. They're
well,
not necessary.
they're not gratuitous. It's just
They don't add anything to it. I'm sorry.
they're
They don't.
they're superfluous.
They're superfluous. So please.
Yeah.
And because the story should be good enough without all that
Yeah.
crap. Really.
Well, if they had a point like in Californication, it always has a point to it, either for comedy or for romance, whatever. But on this show, it doesn't really serve a purpose. You have that Esther woman, and she's just a random Jewish socialist girl, and nobody really cares about her. She doesn't have a character. She doesn't have a personality. She's just a.
Well, she doesn't play a part in the story at all.
She's
I mean,
really
in the finding the
stereotypical.
killer, anything with the killer.
You think that
Nothing with the boy. She doesn't play a part with the boy. She doesn't play a part with the killer. She doesn't play a part with the of Connor or any of that.
She's like a Jewish caricature. Like when you think of, if you've ever seen the Goodfellas, like all those Jewish wives who, oh god, that was gross. Remember that in the Goodfellas, the stereotypes.
Well,
They're
that was more
they're
like the New Jersey
caricatures.
housewives,
And that's
not
what
like
reminds me of.
Jersey Shores.
They're very hollow people, and just like this character. Because I mean, just think about what does she talk? What does she ever talk about on the show? She says her name's Esther. That's the first thing she ever says in the show. It's after she's already had sex twice with him. So I guess he probably didn't even know her name.
He didn't know her name. He says, "What's your name?"
Okay.
At the end.
And then also she says not to ignore her. So that's her character. That's not a character, people. If you're writing a character, you cannot just write somebody like that and expect people to care about them at all. So also, for this season, I would say it really strays too far from being a good story. It has a lot of agenda stuff, which I've already talked about gratuitously, and it has a lot of plot as opposed to character. I think that's the biggest downfall of the show, is that it spends way too much time serving a plot that they think is cool instead of characters who need to grow and change.
Well, I think one problem with that is they didn't have enough episodes to do
Yeah,
that. They
exactly.
could have done a little bit more with what they had, but
Well,
not in 10 episodes.
Hell on Wheels had 10 episodes and they did
Yeah,
fine
but
with.
they had years. This hasn't had years. This was the whole book.
Yeah, but the first season, there's major changes with all the characters. There's no incomplete characters. Just think about spoilers for Hell on Wheels. The main character in Hell on Wheels, last episode, he's determined to kill this guy, and then he kills him, even though the guy shows him his papers that proves that he didn't kill his wife. And so that proves to him, it makes his character change that he can't just go around killing people.
Okay.
Unlike in this show.
Okay. Well, we better wrap it up because it's
So
going to take forever to upload.
for this show, uh, yeah, just way too much feminist agenda, too much plot. The production looks ugh. It looks dull, and there's very anticlimactic end. And overall, I would rate this season a Kroger coffee cake.
Real cute.
A Kroger coffee cake with uh too much it's too overcooked. The overcookingness of the coffee cake represents the feminist agenda.
Okay, well, I'm going to give it a Hungarian goulash with a glass of red wine because they had all those beautiful dinners, they had beautiful costumes. It was everybody wants a story about a serial killer from an historic story too. People like historic fiction, and usually you have. Pirates, or you have explorers, or you have cowboys,
Treasure,
and it's or you might have the Civil
a
War.
femme fatale.
Yeah, and so this is more. This is our country growing. It's the turn of the century, and I just think it's they tried, and
They tried.
I thought I liked it. But I also read the book. So by suggesting again, read the book if you want to read the whole complete thing and it's helpful. And watch the extras
And
because those are some of those are really good.
they were starting to get away from a feminist agenda, and then they had that horrible, unforgivable scene in the hospital, and that scene
Oh, that
wrecked
really
the
made me.
show.
Well, that was a racist and a feminine feminist.
Agenda.
Sorry,
It was both.
agenda. It never happened in
That
the
was
book at
horrible.
all. You never. In fact, in the book they have a what do you call it? Where you add a scene at the end. It tells what happens to people in the future. Epilogue.
Where
Where
Cyrus
Cyrus
is fine.
gets married,
Yeah,
and they all work for Mr. Chrysler,
yeah.
and Stevie gets a tobacco shop.
Of course,
And
Stevie doesn't really have a character
no,
either
he
on
doesn't
the
have
show,
much of it. Just that one episode
where he pretends to be
he,
Stella.
he pretends to be a girl, and to lure the serial killer out. He gets a tobacco shop. There's never a mention of Cyrus having a sister or the sister coming to see him and saying shitty things. Sorry that I said that word,
There
but
are shitty
to
things, she
Chrysler,
said.
which I didn't appreciate because Chrysler was not treating him like a slave. I thought they were a family. I thought they felt like family, and he said that too. I thought,
Saves Cyrus's life.
yeah, he saves his life, and because Cyrus, yeah, that's right, he saved his life. He could have
And
been put to death. He
oh,
murdered somebody,
well,
or
you
been in
know,
prison forever and ever and ever.
oh, slaves. We gotta have a mention of slaves.
Well, it's just anyway that never happened, and it was stupid to have that in there. It really made me mad.
Yeah,
Didn't add anything
that
to it.
scene.
if they didn't have all this extra crap, they could have put the scene in with Connor. And he came at the end of the book. He came to this reservoir. He had two thugs with him, so it was three people, two guys and Connor, and they were up to no good. And he wanted to get the killer, and of course he got that other guy, killed the Silver Smile guy in the TV show.
The
It
better
wasn't in the book.
villain.
But anyway, there was a boxer who Chrysler hired, and he came at them with a lead pipe, and he beat the crap out of Connor and these two thugs because he's a boxer who's really good.
I actually think that
They didn't have it.
it would have been, pardon me, it would have been Tarantino-esque.
Yes, it was Tarantino-esque
It would
to
have
have
been
had that.
really funny if a guy just came running up to them and
Well, they would have known who he was. It was a guy who had a reputation. He was like with the brothels, associated with the brothels and the corruption and like gangs running around of bad guys. And they would have known who he was.
I just want to show all about him now.
Well, they didn't. He wasn't even in the TV show. The only guy
wasn't
they
even there.
showed, there were a couple of. Remember the
They showed the fancy
brothel guy.
owner.
They had him in the book too, and he was one. Although he had this, he was the head of a brothel. He wore really nice clothes, and he talked like quote society people. So he was able to kind of on the sidelines or kind of on the fringe of running around with society because the way he looked, he drove this nice carriage, and he talked nicely. But this other guy, he was kind of involved with the brothels too. But he was like I said, he was a boxer. He's a prize fighter, and he had a reputation for being, he could kill you and beat the crap out of you, and you never walk again or something. He's really bad, and Chrysler hired him. He probably paid him and to do this, and they could have. I thought that would have added to it. And the only thing is, though, I liked it that Joseph was not killed.
But that was
he
a
was
good
spared.
change.
That he was
But
spared.
then
That was
he
a good
doesn't get
thing.
an ending, so
No, he
he
doesn't
might
get an
as
ending.
well have gotten killed.
We don't know. We don't know what happens. We don't know if John Moore takes in the TV show. We don't know if John Moore is gonna.
Which is what
Help
leads
him
us
out.
to the last thing. Should the show come back? And why? I'm gonna say no, obviously.
Well, I'll say
Sophie's
yes.
gonna say yes. So defend yourself. 1, 2, 3, go.
Well, because I like shows about serial killers. So
Oh, okay.
and I like historical things. I like some of the things that they show. They did have in the extras. They did say that for all the things that they do, like what they eat, what they wear, like the census, the enumerators, the decor, everything. They had historical specialists on each one of those aspects to to authenticize or make authentic what people saw when they watched the show.
Alright, I'll say no because I think it's a very dressed up show. It's basically it's too dressed up for its own good. It's too much plot. I mean, I would say for them to just come back and do original, just use the characters and do original stuff. I mean, that's what Bates Motel did. They took these infamous characters and did original material. It was really, 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 really good. So they could do that, and obviously they came up with the guy from The Silver Smile, and that guy was creepy, and
Yeah.
he should have been the bad guy, or his father and his mother should have been the bad guys, or maybe a killer's just using him. Maybe they have an affair, something with the Silver Smile guy, because that guy was cool. in a creepy way.
He was very creepy. He was
Yeah.
creepier than he was creepier than the guy they picked to be the serial killer.
Well, as I said before, the serial killer, he's Tarzan mixed with Jeff Bridges.
I
So
thought he reminded me of that guy who played the Unabomber in that
yeah,
recent
Paul
Unabombers
Bettany.
because he was tall, he had really long hair, he was dirty.
He had a soothed, calming voice that's, I'm a really intelligent serial killer and I'm soothed and calm.
Yeah.
And so, overall, I would say no though, because I know that's not what they're going to do. They're going to do exactly what they did this season,
Well,
which,
no, I
which
don't
is they're
know.
going to take his books, they're going to butcher them, and replace a lot of stuff with feminist agenda, and they're going to have no character development. They're not going to have uh, good characters anyway, and they're going to insert original stuff that doesn't even add anything because it doesn't go anywhere because it can't go anywhere because they're too constrained in the material.
Well,
So I would say no.
that would depend because Fox has rights to one of the books, and the other thing I can't remember. I don't think TNT has the rights to anymore doing anymore. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. But I know the Fox has rights to one of the books, so they're not going to get that one. So unless somebody money changes hands or something and they buy it from I don't know how that all that works. So well, we better wrap it up. So I hope everybody enjoyed it, and we'll we're supposed to be doing Master Chef Junior this season, but Marco has not uploaded any of our reviews, and that will be a lot simpler because
I wanted to wait until the Alienist was done.
it's pretty straightforward, very straightforward because it's a reality show and it's kids.
And I would say I prefer this show.
No.
I prefer this show to Master Chef Junior season 6 with Joe. Safi.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know.
I prefer the Alienist to Master Chef Junior season 6
Oh.
with Joe. Joe
Yeah.
the jackass.
Yeah. Well, let's just wait and we'll talk about that when we we have been reviewing. We've done reviews for all the recent episodes.
You'll see them.
We've got to do one more. We have to do the latest one. Um, but anyway, I hope you all enjoy our reviews. We went long on this because this was the finale, and we wanted to talk about the series as a whole, in addition to summarizing what happened in the final episode. So, goodbye, everybody. See you soon.
Goodbye.